Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis, the Cycling Greek. This is my fourth week, the middle of my fourth week of my on the bike strength training block. Being the fourth and last week of this block, I want to significantly dial back the intensity I've been using during the first 3 weeks. While I could bang out 1 or 2 quality reps of strength intervals today, I don't want to do strength intervals today. Not only are those tough physically, but they're tough mentally, and I just needed a break from them. So I decided to do something a little different. Sweet spot training. The sweet spot ranges between the upper part of zone 3 tempo to the lower part of zone 4 threshold. Basically, it's not quite as hard as your time trial pace. If you don't have a lot of time to train, Sweet Spot is a great tool to have in your workout arsenal, as it incorporates benefits from both zone 3 and zone 4. If you do have a lot of time to train, it is still a good tool to use, but it shouldn't take the place of endurance work. So the workout for today is 1 hour of Sweet Spot training up an 8-mile climb. To figure out my Sweet Spot wattage range, I first started off with my 20-minute FTP. During the previous racing season, it was 281 watts. I certainly can't use that, because during the off-season, things dialed back a bit. Not only that, I'm still recovering from a broken collarbone and ribs. After a few weeks of when arming it on the trainer really easy, I was finally able to get on the road and I posted a 251 watt 20-minute test. A couple weeks later, it was 263 watts. So that's what I'm going to use. The next thing I had to do was convert my 20-minute FTP to 1 hour FTP. And that's a pretty easy calculation. I just take 95% of my 20, and that is my 1 hour. Keep in mind though, that this is a general rule of thumb. My next step was to establish the upper and lower limits of my wattage range. Researching various references on the subject, I came up with 88 to 93% of my 1 hour FTP, 220 to 233 watts. The research also suggested that my heart rate would be between 123 and 135 BPM. I gotta tell you, that wattage range seemed low to me. Maybe because back in the day, my FTP was often between 310 and 320, and at the highest FTP I recorded during a 40-minute time trial, climbing time trial, was 333 watts. Be that as it all was, this was week 4 of my training block, so I was going to experiment a bit. Even though I was going to stay within the wattage range, I was going to use the Phil Guyman method of time trialing, where the first third is going to be a little easier than your time trial range, the second third is going to be your time trial range, and the last third is going to be a little harder. Editor's note, I used this picture of Phil because he crashed a few weeks before I did. As it turned out, that first third, especially the first half of that first third, was easy. My wattage average was still at the top of the sweet spot range. Make note that my heart rate was also within range too. Toward the end of the second third, it wasn't feeling so easy anymore. My average wattage dropped to 225, but my heart rate went above the suggested average to 141. Toward the end of the third, or actually the end of the ride, I was starting to get tired. My wattage was still the same, but my heart rate was creeping up. When you put all 3 thirds together, they started to tell an interesting story. My power was actually pretty consistent. The speed was pretty consistent too. Now the last third indicated probably that there were long ranges of slightly flatter gradients compared to the first 2 thirds. Same thing with the cadence. However, the heart rate. The heart rate creeped up with each third. That's probably due to a combination of the length of the interval and the altitude gain. When you view the interval in its entirety, while my heart rate was above the suggested parameters, my wattage was smack dab in the middle of the sweet spot power range. Not only was I good and tired at the end, but I was hungry. It was goals met and workout successful. I hope you enjoyed this video and got something out of it for your training. I have my Strava linked below. Remember to follow me on Strava so you can get some ideas for your training. And as always, comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.